Well, hello, my friend. My name is Joe Bakmotsky. I'm the founder of Power to Be Happy and also the author of Finding Hope in Times of Uncertainty, a guide to thriving in the challenging world of today. And listen, what do people tell you when you tell them about maybe a mistake that you've made at work or said something that you'd rather take back? Well, usually it's the same thing you tell yourself probably. You say things like, it's okay, it happened, I can't do anything about it now. We all make mistakes and, don't do it again. Forget about it and move on. And that's valid, right? In so many ways. It's valid, right? Because it makes sense. And yet sometimes it just leaves you with this feeling of something missing. It leaves you feeling like there's some kind of unfinished business, like that it's just something that's kind of eating away at you, and you kind of, maybe you can't even put your finger on it because you're kind of going on with your life, but it's at the back of your mind, and it's just affecting the way that you live your life in some way. And what I really believe we all want to be able to do is take that mistake or something that you feel didn't go to plan and work through it. Work through it in such a way that you get to completely put it behind you. So you really get to put it in a place where you've worked through it, you've taken something that you need from it, and you maybe learn something about yourself and the future in a way that's going to help you, when the right time comes, and it's going to feel like a weight off your shoulders that's been lifted, and now you've taken something on for yourself. You've taken on a new strength that you can take with you into the future. So how do you go about doing that? Well, I really believe that most of the time we don't really need to act on the impulse of doing immediately something after you've done a mistake. Unless it's something that's broken and that urgently needs to be fixed, or maybe someone is really upset, and of course you want to be able to talk to them and try to remedy the situation, right? That's what we want to be able to do. But sometimes before going in and trying to fix something or just kind of putting it aside, well, out of the way where you feel it's something that hasn't really worked out the way that you wanted to, I think it's important to really go and examine it and go through a process where you can unpick the situation and really make sense of it and find something in it that is going to really serve you into the future. And so we have to start somewhere, right? I'll tell you, I've got exactly 4 steps in this process that will really help you to go from a mistake that feels like an unfinished business really to a place where you feel like you're on top of it. You've completed it, you've picked out your learnings, and you're ready to move on in a powerful way with something that new that's going to help you and serve you into the future. So the first thing is really picking out a starting point. And I think when it comes to mistakes or things that didn't go to plan, we often tend to go and look at something that's happened, like an event, something that's taken place. But I don't think that gives us a lot of value, because oftentimes when we're in a situation, there's multiple things going on. It's easy to kind of misinterpret or miss things, or just to focus on something that's very specific and kind of miss out on all of these other things. So that's why, rather than focusing on a specific event, I really want to zoom in on a feeling. Because the feeling, this is when And this is when we start to uncover, like, what's really getting at you, something that's really, that's really making you feel unpleasant or worked up, right? So we want to go after the feeling. So if you feel if you made a mistake and you know it's a recent situation, right? It's something that's happened perhaps today, perhaps last week. So if you think of something, what that is, and if you can pick out, you remember what it's all about, you can remember the general situation. Remember, what is the feeling that you had when it happened, or as it was happening, or right after? What is the feeling that you felt? Like, was it just feeling awkward? Was it frustrated? Were you scared? Like, what did it happen? How did you feel? And if you can, go back to the moment where it really happened, that feeling, right? And once you know what the feeling is, now, so we know the feeling, that's the first step. Now we want to go, what was the actual trigger? What happened that set you off? Because there's multiple things happening. You could have been with multiple people. There was all sorts of things that were happening. And we want to be able to put that aside and figure out what was the one thing that set you off. Right? Because oftentimes we have history. There's all these complex things that are happening around us in every single situation, right? Even when it was, even if it's like, if it's say, if it's one-on-one situation, right? There's always some kind of other things that are going on. So we want to be able to instead zero in what was the specific thing that happened that maybe set you off or set things in motion, and what was it that made you feel this way? Was it something you said? Was it something the other person said? Was it something that happened? What was it? Now that you know the trigger, you know something that's really set you off in that situation, the next step in this process is what I call balance, right? Because we want to be able to find a balanced view of what happened. We want to be able to really weigh up the situation. We want to look at it just in the way that it is. We want to be able to weigh it up and get the lay of the land, right? You want to kind of orientate yourself the way you would on a map. And when I'm saying a map, I'm talking about an old school map. I don't know if you remember, right? I don't know if you remember like an old school printed map. I remember I had the printed map. It was this beautiful map of Tokyo, right? And I was on my own in Japan, and I was walking around Tokyo, and I had this map, right, that was with me, and it held all sorts of landmarks and street names and all sorts of things. And one of the biggest changes, right, we had on the old school map as opposed to a GPS on your phone, is that which just kind of tells you where to go. On the map, right, you have to find where you're at, but you have to see the exact location where you're at right now before you're going to decide where you're going to go. And I think it's the same thing here. If you feel that if you want to kind of find a way out, if you want to put it behind you, this situation, this mistake or something that didn't go to plan or something that went wrong, we've talked about the feeling. You know the feeling. You know what's gonna set you off or triggered the situation in the first place, or how it's come about. Now we want to be able to kind of put it all together. Right? We want to be able to see, like, this is where you are. Here is what happened next. Here is what happened after that, and you kind of just want to walk through the whole situation. You're going to want to walk through, have a really good understanding of what happened. If there was other people in it, how did they react? How did it make you feel? And you kind of just want to run through that specific situation, because it's usually something that happened within a particular time frame, whether something that took maybe a minute, something that took an hour. It usually was, confined to a specific time and space. So how did it all lay out? How did it happen? And you want to just walk through it in a calm way, just in your head, what happened through the sequence, and understand how did those things make you feel, and what set you off, and how did it come about? How did people react? What were the sort of interactions? What did you do next? Did you say or do anything after that? That's really important. The reason why I call it balance is because we're getting a balanced view of what happened, right? We want to understand how did the situation come about, because we don't want to have our emotions come in and dictate the way that you feel, the way that you behave, and just kind of direct where you are. It's normal to have emotions come up. It's normal to have, or to do or say things because something just gonna happen, right? But we want to be able to not have those emotions just completely direct us into our day-to-day life, right? That's what makes a big difference. So when you feel like you've walked through the situations in your mind and you have a good understanding of what it's about, we're not necessarily here looking for, what you did wrong. And the objective here is not to beat yourself up or say that what you did, here's what I did wrong and I'm a horrible person. The objective isn't also here to lay blame, right? And say, well, it's this other person's fault, or, the situation just happened, I had no other choice. We're here simply to, without making any kind of judgment, we want to be able to really get a balanced view of what happened, how, just kind of the way you would, in court, right? Where they would look at the facts. Here is what happened, and here's where we are right now, and here is the situation, right? So now you have a balanced view, right? We're not letting our emotions really take over control over what happened. And now the fourth step in this situation is we want to find a resolution, right? We don't want to just leave it as it is. We want to understand, well, first of all, what could be the action that you take out of this. And the action could be immediate, right? If this is something that you could fix, right? If it's something that you feel was where you might need to, for example, either apologize or talk to someone, or put something into play to try to remedy the situation, right? If you feel like you've done something that needs to be fixed in the immediate term, that you feel is the right way to go. But also the part of that is, what about the future action, right? Because the true resolution comes from learning from the experience. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I did a webinar. I did a talk about men's health. And there was a bunch of people on the webinar, and it was online, like a video conferencing call. And as I was walking kind of through the talk, I asked a question. And I felt that there was someone on the call who wanted to say something. And I said, well, how did that make you feel? And in that moment, the person hesitated and they didn't say much. They just said that they never felt this way. And I felt that I kind of put them on the spot. There's nothing horrible that's happened, but I felt like I kind of put this person on the spot there. And it set me off because I started to overthink, and I started to go off on little tangents that I probably wouldn't have gone on otherwise. And I kind of lost control a little bit of the situation. I feel like it wasn't a complete disaster, but at the end of it, I finished it with the feeling that I could have done better. I was exhausted. And I spent a fair bit of time going through this. I went on a big walk a few hours later, and I just kind of really stepped through it, step by step. That really tried to my best to make sense of it and try to really piece it together in my mind. And what I realized was that there was a couple of things that happened. Well, first of all, because I felt that I put this person on the spot, I probably could have, maybe just apologize. I said, well, so sorry if I put you on the spot, right? That's one thing I could have done that would have made things better. I could have tried to follow up with the person. And then I thought, you know what? I probably could have said the scene better at the start, right? What I could have done is I could have said something at the start like, this is a safe space. I'm going to talk about these types of things, and I'm going to, sometimes ask questions. And if you feel like contributing, that's great. And if you don't, that's totally cool. But just know that this is a safe space and you can say whatever you feel comfortable with saying. Something along those lines, I think, would have been better. And then I also realized that another reason why I went off on these little tangents and lost a bit of confidence is because I wasn't fully prepared. I mean, I've talked about a lot of these issues before. I've shared my stories in a similar way. I've talked about men's health a fair bit. But I didn't rehearse, I didn't prepare as well as I could have. And I feel that if I feel I would have been able to handle it in a much better way. I would have felt more confident. I would have felt like I was on top of things more. And I made a decision that in the resolution was, the biggest takeaway would be that I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to work on preparing for these webinars in a big way, or in fact for anything that I'm doing, and that I kind of slacked off. And it wasn't a comfortable realization, because I could have said, well, it's a nothing thing, it's no one got offended seriously, I still did the talk, I still had some, great feedback at the end in the chat, and people said nice things in the end, but I didn't do my best, and I knew that. So, and I went through this process that I've just talked to you about right now. I first went to the feeling, and I remember how it made me feel awkward, when I felt like I put this person on the spot a little bit. The next, I kind of went on the trigger, right? And I said, well, the trigger was that I think I just kind of pushed them, and how I said it in the moment, I could have done it in a way that probably was a little more soft or subtle, right? I felt like it was a little gung-ho, right? So that was the trigger, and the fact that I looked at this person and I thought that they wanted to say something, and I misjudged it a little bit. So I think I could have, that was the trigger. And the balanced view is I walked through the whole situation and how it made me feel, how did it affect me, really sharing my story and giving value to people who want the webinar to hopefully learn something about themselves, right? That's the whole process of why you're here, right? Why you're listening to this is when we hear somebody's perspective, oftentimes we can pick out something for ourselves that helps us to move forward and find better ways of dealing with challenges of day-to-day life, right? So that's, I think, is something that really helped me to get closure, and I hope it can help you as well, and go through the process when you're in a spot where you feel like maybe you made a mistake or said something that you'd rather take back. That go through the process of spend that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour to go through it and piece it together. To go, first of all, look at the feeling. How did it make you feel? Then you can look at the trigger. Like what was the situation that set you off? Then you look at the balance, like the balanced view, like how did the whole thing pan out in terms of facts? What happened? How did it work? And finally, resolution is you look at, well, what is it that I can take away for the future, for the immediate future? Is there something I need to do? But also for longer term, something that can help me to deal with a similar situation if it might come up. So my name is Joe Bekmotsky. I hope this has helped you, because this is something that happens to all of us. And I think it's always important to find better ways of dealing with life's challenges. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time.